to Unfold. I am Jawad Tehami. In today's program, we are going to take up for discussion two very important developments. The first relates to the overall state of economy in the world, given the fact there has been a statement by Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney who says that era of free trade and investment has ended. Why did Canadian Prime Minister gives such a statement out and at such a forum that is Asia Pacific Economic Forum? That is the question that we are going to take the answers and the assessment on in the first segment of our today's show. In the second segment, we are going to talk about the possible implications of US signing a 10-year defense framework agreement with India, given the fact that Pakistan says that it is aware of this particular development and is examining its implications regarding regional peace, stability, and security. Starting with the first one. Now, let me quickly quote Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, who has said, "Era of free trade and investment has ended and rule-based open trade no longer works." Unquote. Now, he gave out this particular statement at a business event on the opening day of the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in South Korea on Friday. At the same time, he has also indicated that Canada would edge away from its dependence or reliance on the trade with the United States of America, also hinting that in the next decade, they aim to double their non-US exports. At the same time, he had a formal meeting with the Chinese President, Mr. Xi Jinping, and said he looks forward to working closely with President Xi Jinping to help build a more sustainable and inclusive international system. For his part, President Xi Jinping has invited Canadian Prime Minister to visit China and also said ties between the two countries have shown signs of recovery. China is willing to work with Canada to bring China-Canada relations back on the right track. At the same time, Canadian Prime Minister said he looked forward to constructive and pragmatic dialogue with China. Now, it comes in the backdrop when we saw Canadian Prime Minister Mr. Mark Carney earlier saying that Canada would resume trade negotiations with the US only when the Americans are ready. And President Donald Trump had decided to immediately end all the trade negotiations over a TV ad opposing US tariffs, quoting former President Reagan. We also have come across some media reports that point to a fact that a Canadian Prime Minister, Mr. Mark Carney, has tendered an apology regarding that particular TV ad, which is anti-US tariffs, to President Donald Trump. I will be taking the analysis regarding as to multiple dimensions associated with this particular statement, as to the bilateral relationship between Canada and the US and how Canada is now repositioning itself and also repairing its ties with China. And we'll be having that understanding from our esteemed panel of guests right after a short break. For that, stay tuned. To unfold, the era of free trade and investment has ended. That has been said by Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney. And to understand what actually lies beneath this particular statement, what does he exactly mean, and what sort of an impact this particular statement is going to have as far as the bilateral economic and trade relations of Canada with the United States of America are concerned. For that, we are honored to be joined in the studio by Mr. HUMAYUN SHAMI, is President, Pakistan Economic Forum. Mr. Shami, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. And through the video link, we are honored to be joined by Mr. ATIF. He's a senior economist. And Mr. ATIF, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. Mr. HUMAYUN SHAMI, this particular statement that era of free trade and investment has ended. Why do you think Canadian Prime Minister to come up with this statement? What lies under this particular statement? Is it specifically targeted towards the US?
Partially yes, because in the last statements, if you look at the behavior of the U.S. president with the Canada, and one time he even said that the Canada should become a 51st state of USA also. So I think it didn't give a good effect in the Canadian area. But here I would say that the Canada is also part of the 7 big states and G7. So where are you talking about the free trade? At times the free trade used to be very effective and very is a big tool for the developed countries against the underdeveloped countries. Because the Western countries, they were much ahead in the technology, in the economic areas, in everything, banking, financial, everywhere. They were ahead. So there was a time when there used to be colonial system used to be, and at time you remember that East India Company also came here in India, and they wanted free trade that time without taxes. So then they came and they occupied this area, and many other countries were also made on the same reasons, by the Dutches and the English and French. They all wanted free trade. So but at that time it used to suit them. But now when the situation is this, that due to the high cost of production in the Western countries, now they are uncompetitive. So the countries like China, like India also to some extent, Vietnam, Bangladesh and South Korea, so they came up, particularly the Asia rose up. So they have advantage for the cheap labor force, they have advantage for the cheap raw material also. And China also subsidizes product, particularly in the utilities, in the energy sector. To some extent they dumped also their products. So now it is and their products were sold very on a high rate because these were cheaper, and so it also were very effective for that it curbed the inflation rate in the Western countries, which they wanted also. So I think now at this moment the free trade does not suit to them, because they have become uncompetitive. So now obviously they are turning towards again.
What do we understand? What do we understand of the rule-based open trade? What is rule-based open trade? And when it has been brought in that particular statement by Mr. Mark Carney?
My presumption is this, that rule-based mean to some there should be some control, there should be some parameter. But like one thing I think this is very important also here, that it is a fact that China subsidize its this is why the WTO also allowed to have to put some anti-dumping duty on the Chinese product, because they subsidize particularly their electricity cost. Power cost is a big issue, is a big component of the expenditure towards the industrial production. So I think he might mean that there should be some check on these things also, that when two countries are on trade, so it should be seen in the same parameters.
I get your point. I'll come back to you for a number of other aspects to be taken your view on. Mr. SHAIKOH Atif, can you hear me, please?
I can, certainly.
Okay, Mr. SHAIKOH Atif, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for being with us on Unfold tonight. Really appreciate that. You're sitting there in Canada, and here we're discussing that particular statement by the Canadian Prime Minister regarding the rule-based open trade, and has also said the era of free trade and investment has ended. Why the Canadian Prime Minister gave this particular statement out at such an important forum at the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit?
Well, since the Second World War, the world has seen an unprecedented explosion in wealth, in well-being. So all of that is credited in major part to free trade, and the rules that were negotiated in treaties right after the Second World War. Now, the biggest global event that has happened since that time, excluding the 1989 fall of the Berlin Wall, has been Trump levying tariffs to the global community. you are hosting this program at a very important junction where the Supreme Court is going to take up the legality of these tariffs next week. And they might just say that whatever Donald Trump is doing is not constitutional as far as the American Constitution is concerned. So it is a nail biter, and it is really become a big issue in the United States, where the people of the United States, only
I get your
8%
point. I get your point. To
support
proceed with this particular point further, when you mentioned that after the World War II and the biggest phenomenon that happened in the world, when you were about to say, what I perceived was it was COVID-19 pandemic, but surprisingly, you've mentioned that it is the imposition of tariffs by President Donald Trump, which you are also mentioning that it is going to be taken up by the Supreme Court of the United States of America regarding its legality. Now, when it comes to the imposition of tariffs vis-a-vis Canada, most particularly, what is the situation at this particular point in time between the two countries? At what level that particular tariff stands for Canada from the US side?
You have to forgive me, Jawad. I'm an economist, so I think in economic terms, of course, COVID was a major event. You are absolutely correct. As far as Canada is concerned, 70% of our trade is with the United States. As you said, our Prime Minister Mark Carney, you mentioned in your intro, has said that we are going to aim to double our non-US trade, but it's been a big problem for Canada, uh, relying so heavily on one country. It just goes back to show that how close the ties were and are still between the Canadian and the American people. In the US, they did a survey. Canada as a country is more popular in the US than their own presidents. There are more people who are pro-Canada. So it is, and there are people who live in the United States and work in Canada and vice versa. So it has become a phenomenal shock to the system and the value system of the Canadian people. They don't know how to think about their American brothers, except for they thought of them as family. And now suddenly a member of the family says, you don't belong to us. Because remember, Canada is also the largest purchaser of US production. Canada not only sells the most to America, it also buys the most of American goods compared to any other country in the world.
Okay, so Mr. Shikoh, you already mentioned that the expectations on the part of the Canadians was something on a very different plane, and now you also said they actually considered the Americans as their own family. What about that particular statement by President Donald Trump when he talked of Canada being the 51st state, or perhaps taking over Canada as the 51st state of the United States of America? So by looking at this particular statement of President Donald Trump, was it welcomed in Canada if Canadians consider the Americans as their family, or did this particular statement did not go very well with the Canadians in general? And do you think these statements, subsequently, the kind of irritants that we have seen this particular bilateral relationship had been going through, is primarily because of that particular statement?
So someone defined good friend as along yet apart from each other. That's what Canadians believe. Not they love Americans, but Canadians are a very proud people and very proud of their own individual character and values. And while I must grant this to Donald Trump, he might have meant it as an affectionate sort of a gesture, but Canada has its own sovereignty. It was not very well received in Canada that you don't respect us enough as a different, as okay, we are not don't aim to be an equal partner, but as an independent country. But then to be punitive about it, it is me very much, or I will punish you. So that's not the kind of relationship that over the centuries has been there between Canada and the US. It is a cultural adjustment for both of these countries and the people of both of these countries.
Right, Mr. Atif, now negotiations regarding trade, this particular front had been going on between the two countries, the United States of America and Canada. Then a decision by President Donald Trump was made to end all sorts of negotiations over a TV ad. Now that particular advertisement, which was paid for by the government of Canadian province of Ontario, uses excerpts of a 1987 speech in which former President Reagan said that the trade barriers hurt every American worker. Now there are reports that the Canadian Prime Minister has tendered an apology to President Donald Trump regarding that particular ad. Do we understand after this particular apology there is any sort of a chance of resumption of the already stalled trade negotiations between the two countries?
Well, you know, it is historically unprecedented that, that a statesman would make decisions based on important events, important technical and economic events like a trade negotiation based on an advertisement. So, to be honest with you, right now, Canada and most of the statesmen across the globe feel like they're dealing with a child whose ego is takes precedence over. And this is the this was a prime example of that. Seeing an advertisement, of course, Mark Carney has apologized because we have to deal with the biggest global superpower, which is the United States. But no one is actually apologetic. You mentioned the province of Ontario, which sponsored this ad. The province of British Columbia next week is coming out with another ad, which talks a little bit about the impact of tariffs on the lumber export of, which is the major state of the British Columbian, where the Vancouver is in that province. So they're coming out with another advertisement next week. I don't know what happens to Canada and the globe when that ad comes out next week.
After this particular apology has been tendered, do you think Prime Minister is going to allow the publishing of that particular ad by British Columbia?
Jawad, provinces are pretty autonomous here. So whether it's going to have, it is for sure going to have a negative impact on.
I get your point. I get your point, Mr. SHAIKOH. If I'll come back to you when it comes to Canada, finding the alternatives, when it is repositioning as far as trade relations in the world are concerned. There's been a formal meeting between President Xi Jinping and Canadian Prime Minister. As well, a number of important points I want your take regarding that. One is, Mr. Shami, now, comparing the two situations, this particular statement by Prime Minister of Canada, in comparison to that particular TV ad, which would be the most disliked as far as the American president's perspective is concerned?
I don't think that American will like to accelerate this war with business war or trade war with Canada, because it also China, America is already engaged in a trade war, tariff war with China and other countries. So it would like to want to even solve that. Recently, you have seen that the America.
But all the trade negotiations were ended. There was a decision made by President Donald Trump post that TV ad.
Yeah. But I do, actually all of the white people, both sides, actually almost the same creed. So obviously, and President Trump, he gave some time to statement. Like China, they said 100% tariff they imposed, and now it has reduced to 40%.
Yes, but your
so this,
I think it will not
China
be aside for a second. Keeping China aside for a second, as per your understanding, what are the major irritants when it comes to the bilateral trade and economic relations of Canada with the United States of America?
Irritants, you mean for Canada?
In between both of these countries, what are the major irritants that have actually apparently separated both the countries apart on the front of economic and trade relations?
I think one thing could be that the China now is coming as a big player. So the recently Canada also has tried to accelerate its trade and business investment relationship with China. So I don't think that I think that America will never like that Canada should go in the camp of the China, because in that case it will be a big big.
Okay, so if this particular strained relationship between the US and Canada, subtracting China for a second from that particular entire equation, do you think that would have any sort of a detrimental effect on the US if this particular strained relation continues?
Yeah, it could be, because the America is the big importer of the Canadian oil, and the Canadian oil is particularly it's of that side where the American the refineries of America, they are I mean they are suitable for refining those Canadian oil, raw oil, human. So I think that if it is not imported by the America from the Canada, so obviously it will have a great impact on the profitability of the American refineries. So it will be definitely a bump. And then in China, whatsoever actually America is importing, almost with every country, America has a trade deficit. The reason being that America the cost of business in America is higher than China, even in Canada.
I get your point. Mr. Shikwa, let me bring him into the discussion as well. How do you see Canada repositioning itself as far as its bilateral relationship in terms of economy and trade towards China is concerned? This particular formal meeting between the two top leaders of the two countries, the kind of statements we have seen, the recovery in the ties between the two countries, and China also looking forward to do its effort to put this particular bilateral relationship on the right track. So do we understand that Canada has found a right alternative to its dependence in terms of trade from the US side, edging away from US towards China?
Well, these are on the parts of both of these countries. However, both of them benefited from the United States based on only one thing, primarily, and that was an exchange rate advantage. China had that, and they unduly kept the value of the yuan lower as well, and they were cautioned by the World Trade Organization on that as well. And Canada also has an exchange rate advantage compared with the United States. Since both of them benefit from their own presence, the same strategy, and both of the people, there is not enough buying power that the United States has. So to quick answer to your question, no, that's not the right alternative while the intentions are good, I don't see it as a long-term thriving partnership.
But this particular interaction between the two leaders, do you think it's going to annoy the US administration?
Absolutely, to no end. It will certainly annoy. So a very pertinent question. But that's all it is just a sort of a vision of we are both suffering from the same problem, which is Donald Trump.
Mr. SHAIKOH, senior economist, joining us through the video link all the way from Canada. Thank you very much for taking time out for Unfold tonight. Really appreciate that. Mr. HUMAYUN SHAMI is president of Pakistan Economic Forum, joined us in the studio. Mr. Shami, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on this show tonight. Really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of the first segment. In the second segment, we are going to talk about the possible implications of the defense pact between the United States of America and India, the kind of response Pakistan has given. After a short break, for that, stay tuned. Welcome back to Unfold. In this particular segment, we are going to talk about the U.S. Signing defense framework agreement with India. This particular agreement was actually signed back in 2005. That was ultimately renewed back in 2015. And 20 years down the line, what sort of implications it had for the regional peace, stability and security? What does it exactly mean for the bilateral defense cooperation between the United States of America and India? Also given at a time when most recently we have seen this particular bilateral relationship between US and India taking a nosedive in terms of that particular imposition of tariffs from US President Donald Trump. And not only that, when it came to the crushing defeat by Pakistan to Indian aggression back in May, and over a number of times on multiple occasions, it was US President Donald Trump who has taken the credit of bringing in a ceasefire between the two nuclear-armed neighbors in that particular standoff in the month of May. Now, what does this particular pact between, or the extension of the already reached agreement between the United States of America and India back in 2005, if this is an extension of that, what does that mean given the timing when the bilateral relationship between the US and India have deteriorated to quite an extent? Pakistan's relationship with the United States of America has improved considerably over the last many months, and also Pakistan nominating President Donald Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize for his mediation efforts, his peace efforts around the globe. We'll be taking the assessment from our esteemed panel of guests who are joining us through the video link. Dr. Jamil Khan is former ambassador. Dr. Jamil Khan, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Also, through the video link, we'll be joined by Dr. HASSAN Zafar. He is a political analyst. Dr. HASSAN Zafar, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Dr. Zafar, what is the significance of the timing of this particular deal between the US and India? Especially over the last couple of months, we have seen this particular bilateral relationship between the two nosediving to a considerable, in fact, to an unprecedented extent, and also given the Pakistan's diplomatic stature around the world increasing manifold.
Thank you so much for your question. Well, yes, the timing is important, and the timing coincides with many things. Number one, it coincides with what is happening on our western border. The timing is also coinciding with the Bagram Air Base issue, which President Trump has demanded, in which many fingers were pointing that maybe President Trump wanted Pakistan to play a part in that. And now all of a sudden, we shift our attention toward India, where this impression was mounting that due to the trade tariffs that were imposed on India, 50%, the relationship between the two countries was really going down. But now we see that just a few days ago, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, he said that the relationship with Pakistan was not at the cost of India. So there is a series of events and statements coming from the United States, amidst which this signing of the defense framework agreement has taken place. Now, what is this defense agreement? It is an extension of the already existing defense agreement between India and the United States. And before that, we also know that there has been
if you allow me, I seek your pardon over here. Before heading into what exactly are the contents or could be the possible contents of this particular framework agreement between the two countries, you already mentioned, we all know for a fact, it was President Donald Trump who has actually came up with this particular perception of himself that he's a peacemaker. He wants to end the wars. He has taken the credit of ending more than 8 wars around the world. When it came specifically to his mediating efforts, bringing in a ceasefire between Pakistan and India back in May, isn't it ironic that under the same president, this extension is being given to India of this particular defense pact?
Not at all, because that's what I was trying to explain. This is an extension of an ongoing defense agreement between India and the United States, and nobody should have been under this kind of impression that any kind of distancing has happened between the two nations' joint defense idea. But in India, it is being looked at from a different point of view, quite apprehensively, because the GE, General Electric engines that were supposed to be supplied for the Tejas jets, which India is making, that has been delayed. There was also talk of joint production of these engines which has not taken place. So many things, many ifs and buts. So of course, you're right, there are shadows of doubt hanging over this agreement, that what is actually the importance of this agreement. And when this kind of defense agreement takes place, we also need to understand who is this against. Is this against China, or is this against Pakistan? And if we look at India-Pakistan relations since Pahalgam and Operation Sindoor and the way Pakistan responded to it, India does not look in a very good position in relation to Pakistan when it comes to their military strength and the whole posturing, the military posturing. So why would United States want to put their weight in India's end? I would like to understand it as an economic interest of the United States, because the major interest of the USA could be selling arms to India, which is a major export of the United States. So yes, if India has agreed to cut down on its purchase of the Russian oil, and if it has decided to give access to the to their agri sector, so these were the major demands of the Trump administration. And if India has conceded to those demands, we can understand that they would also concede to the demand that they should be purchasing oil from the USA, and they should be purchasing arms from the USA, because these two things were on the table, that you are buying oil from Russia and you are buying weapons from Russia. So we'll see in the days to come if India has agreed to shift its weapon purchase and oil purchase from Russia to the United States. So this is more favorable for the USA than India, this kind of agreement, and it definitely turns India reduces India rather to the status of a planned state of the USA. So that's how it looks at the moment.
What sort of implications it's going to have when it comes to India's bilateral relationship with Russia? It has largely relied on Russian energy sources in terms of oil, also when it comes to acquisition of weapons. So do you think it's going to be a lot challenging for India to navigate through this particular or over the tightrope when it comes to balancing its relations between the US and Russia?
You're right. India will have to swallow this bitter pill, because now it will have to decide whether it is going to continue buying oil from Russia and the weapons from Russia, or it is going to have an entire paradigm shift in favor of the United States. It's going to, it will have to make it very, very clear. Let's be very clear about one thing, that in this new world order, the revised world order, if you like to put it that way, there is no balancing act possible here. You will have to take some clear sides, and India will have to choose between the United States and Russia for sure.
Right, Mr. Zafar, please stay with us. Let me bring in Dr. Jamil Khan into the discussion also. Dr. Jamil Khan, now what could be the major motive behind this particular extension of an already agreed defense pact between the United States of America and India? Is it the part of the United States Asia strategy when it comes to containing China more specifically? or when it comes to Pakistan's perception of this particular thing, because Foreign Office says that it is aware of the development and it is assessing and examining the implications for regional peace, stability and security. Also, the third dimension, which has been mentioned by Mr. Zafar, they would give dividends to the US firms, and there would be a transfer of that particular weaponry or the systems towards India, and that could be a dividend in the hands of the US. Out of these three points, which one do you think is the biggest motivation at this particular point in time?
Well, I can use the same phrase what has been used by the Secretary of State in the United States. That's a cornerstone of the regional stability and deterrence. After signing this agreement of 10 years defense agreement, this is what he said. And the other remarks which I'm hearing is tackle China growing assertiveness in the region. I would look at it from the geopolitical landscape point of view. And the US has not given up the competition with China or the containment, whatever we may call it. But that would go on. That's their structured foreign policy. And I would find this agreement a sequence of so many 7 other agreements. This is the 7th one, what has been done in last 23 years. And those agreements cover a spectrum of all the defense aspects, and maybe the info sharing or the tech cooperation or otherwise increased defense sale. Of course, once they are having this agreement, there would be some economic say aspects of it also. And this how do we define or how do we assess this F414 jet engines manufacturing, joint manufacturing, and how do we assess this drone aspect of the agreement, that is MQ-9B drones, which is such a high altitude drone, which would definitely increase the competition in the area. Pakistan would also be affected. Let's see what our people are examining, according to the Foreign Office statement. So, and the joint production and development of defense technologies. So definitely it will give a leverage to India and US expertise and technology to boost its defense manufacturing capability of India. This would definitely have the consequences of the competition, the defense competition, or the
do you think it is going to drastically affect the bilateral relationship of India with Russia? India dependent on Russian weapons and oil for such a long time, and they constitute a considerable chunk of India's dependency.
Well, at some point in time, probably India would have to really choose the side. Now, at this point in time, India has more leaning towards the north, towards the US and its allies, and that's what was the turn in their foreign policy some time back. But they have not really revoked any of the agreements, whether it was Navy to Navy cooperation agreement with Russia, or whether it was logistic agreement with Russia, whether it was the defense production agreement. So all those agreements still are active with Russia. So far, the Russians have not been very critical about it. Probably they might also be assessing that. So this Indian this agreement, which covers the AI-based maritime defense, which again is going to really balance, and we totally understand that. Even the statement given after this agreement, it says that in the Indo-China Ocean, we need some presence there and some pressure there. So what's to that effect? So that is a clear indication. About Pakistan, yes, Marco Rubio's statement will take it on his face that it's not at the kind. Basically, any agreement between the two countries, bilateral agreement, they are the sovereign rights of those countries. But at the same time, once it starts tilting the balance of the power in the region, the other countries then start doing it. And we should remember that in the world, there is no higher authority. It's your own power, it's your own strength, which determines your authority. And
That sort of a scenario, Dr. Jamil Khan, doesn't it happen to be the responsibility of the major powers, especially a certain administration of whose president claims to have taken the credit of ending war, yet at the same time he's extending the defense pact? Of course, it is going to be the supply of arms, advanced weaponry to a country that has got the nefarious designs, which has been proven in the recent past. It's malicious designs against Pakistan in particular, and also not only against Pakistan, but also against other regional countries surrounding its borders.
So it again has two aspects of it, two connotations. One is that this sovereign right of the two countries to enter into their agreement, may it be a defense trade or any other agreement for that matter. But as I was saying, that by looking at the agreement and the components and the ingredients of what all is embedded in those agreements, it's going to tilt the balance of power in this region. So the other regional countries, such particularly Pakistan, has to really match its military might with the technology, what they are getting from, and what manner the arms, ammunition, and the equipment they are going to manufacture. So accordingly, it definitely would have its impact. But then again, the international legal framework, no other country can really raise the objection, except that that's
back to you, Dr. Jamil Khan, for your closing comments. And one important point that I want your take on as well, Mr. Zafar. How concerned Pakistan should be vis-a-vis this particular extension of the agreement, and what could possibly be done given the fact the entire world is in fact aware of India's nefarious designs? And also with their Prime Minister and the top officials saying that the so-called Operation Sindoor continues.
Yes, we should be concerned because it's a major development. But on a balance, it doesn't really hurt Pakistan that much as it hurts India. Why? Let me explain. If the Indians have conceded to the demands of the United States, that would mean taking their oil purchase from Russia to the level of pre-Russia-Ukraine war, that was 2%. So that will be down from 46% to 2%. That would mean if Russian oil goes out of the market, oil prices go up. That is imperative for the shale oil producers of America, because the production of shale oil is about $65 a barrel. That is likely to go up to $95 a barrel in the coming years. So it is important for the oligarchs, the American oligarchs, that the Russian oil is taken out of the market. And India has an important role to play in it. It will hurt the Indian economy. It will hurt the Indian economy and the Indian oligarchs, all those who are involved in the oil business. And it would benefit the American oligarchs and the American state. India doesn't have much to gain from this agreement. It is entirely an American thing. They will benefit from it. India doesn't have much to celebrate in it.
Right. So, as far as Pakistan is concerned, brought into the light. So what could be possibly the way forward when it comes to the kind of defense budget India's got on one side, the kind of acquisition of weapons, the kind of massive buildup it is having as compared to what we do have here in Pakistan, and that particular perpetual threat that looms large all the time with the kind of Hindutva-driven mentality that is in place since 2014. So what should be the way forward for Pakistan from here?
Pointed out the Hindutva mentality. Pakistan is not threatened by the Indian military. They always had 8 times, 10 times more military budget than Pakistan. And see the outcome of the so-called Operation Sindoor, how badly they performed on the battlefield. Doesn't matter how much money they have. It's the will to fight and the ability to fight that matters, not only the kind of weapon that you are carrying. So that's not a major worry. But the major worry is the Hindutva ideology. Pakistan is threatened by that ideology more than the kind of weapons and the size of the military budget that India has. It doesn't really worry me, at least, because we know the capability of our armed forces, their valiant armed forces that we have. So India's weapons don't really threaten us. The major threat from India is their Hindutva ideology, which is xenophobic, which is spreading hatred, which is the major cause of instability in our region.
Writer Dr. Hassan Zafar, political analyst, thank you very much for taking time out for Unfold tonight and joining us through the video link. Really appreciate that. Dr. Jamil Khan, a former ambassador, also joined us through the video link. Dr. Jamil Khan, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's episode of Unfold. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.